No. Okay, so hi, my name is Laura Veras, and to start us off, I'm going to read you guys my quote. It's kind of long, but it's pretty common. You should all have heard it by now. When I was 5 years old, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. And that's from John Lennon. So I'll kind of explain why that's so significant throughout my ISM interview, or my ISM journey, when I talk about me. So a little bit about me. My brother was an ISM alumni. His name is Lewis, and right now, he studied business throughout his ISM journey, and now he's at UT, the business school of McCombs. And so he's pretty successful, if you ask me. I mean, that's pretty cool. And then I have a very successful father. My dad grew up in the Dominican, and he grew up from nothing. He was his parents were divorced. Economic wise, it wasn't really great. So he worked super hard, went to college, got his degree, got his MBA in business and finance, and then worked his way up from kind of the bottom of the totem pole, and now he owns 20 Pizza Hut stores, of his own Pizza Hut stores in the DFW area. So he's definitely an inspiration and someone I look up to, just hard work and success wise. And then for me, I kind of strayed away from the business side. I always loved performing and singing and music at a young age. I always wanted to be the center of attention, like calling my parents into the living room just to put on a play or sing or something like that. So that was definitely started out from a young age. And so tying back to the quote, throughout my entire life, I guess you could say, I kind of lived in my brother's shadow and always wanted to, it was very monkey see, monkey do. I always wanted to do what he wanted to do and, follow in his footsteps. But researching or going through my life and realizing that not necessarily was the path for me, I kind of had to stray away and find my own journey. And so that's definitely what I'm trying to do throughout this whole ISM journey. So going into research, I don't know if I mentioned this, but my topic is marketing, music marketing. And so I kind of wanted to get a marketing foundation before I, emphasized on music specifically. So I did a little bit of research, and I found one of the most important things about knowing your marketing, promotion strategies is knowing your clientele and knowing your target audience. So it's definitely something that's really important when promoting a product or managing a client. And considering that our society is becoming more digitalized, it's definitely a new way and a new strategy to promote different products. So I researched kind of the different generations that use technology the most. So as you can see at the bottom, I don't know, laser pointer. So Generation X was born 1965, 1976, and then the millennials are the newest generation, the baby boomers are kind of the older generation. And so there's a close-up on the graph. You kind of see that millennials spend most of their time consuming online data, so it's kind of important to take into consideration when promoting a product, especially when you want to use social media as your outlet. So kind of going from that, I emphasized music, and I learned more about the difference between marketing and a business standpoint, maybe from a Pizza Hut standpoint, like my dad, to the difference between a music marketing standpoint. So I watched this amazing video online, and it was emphasized strictly for music marketing, and it was 40 minutes long, and I'm pretty sure it changed my life. I was like, wow, I think I know everything. I think I'm ready to be a professional. So basically the main points that I learned were, first and foremost, you can have all those marketing strategies in the world. You can have the top promoters, the top everything. You can have all this money, but if you don't have good music, you're not going to be successful. The first thing you have to do is have good music. So that's definitely very important when it comes to the music marketing standpoint. Niche marketing is definitely another good thing to look into when becoming an up-and-coming artist, especially just because niche marketing is when you build that intimate relationship between your fan base and you. So you definitely want to start a small foundation and kind of create that intimate and personal relationship, receiving phone numbers and email addresses and direct addresses to thank them for checking out your music, and then kind of grow from there. And so that goes into creating personal relationships and also creating innovative engagement ideas. You don't just want to be post on Twitter hey, check out my website. You want to intrigue people to come to your website and listen to your music, and kind of introduce them to your moral beliefs and what your music stands for and what you stand for, and kind of build that relationship. So I'm going to skip a bullet point. I'm going to go down to the social media and website. Building your own website is everything, you know. Yes, iTunes and Spotify and SoundCloud, those are great to get your music out there, and those are super beneficial, but they're known to not be, very lenient and beneficial to the artist itself, especially new and up-and-coming artists. They're not known to give you a good fraction of the money. But kind of going on the other side of that, that's not really what they're intended to do. That's not why they were built. They're retailers, so they're not really there to support the artist. They're just there to make their own profit, if that makes sense. So definitely building your own website kind of traffics people to see what you want them to see, and you can even give away your music for free. And by free, you don't necessarily want to just, give it away and then not get anything in return. It doesn't have to be in monetary value. You can, like I said before, get their email address, get their direct address. You're building that network and you're building that relationship intimately, and then, kind of growing from there. And so going back up, radio is everything. Radio. That's the only way that people will hear your music. And so it's obviously kind of hard being an up-and-coming artist, just because there's two sides to the radio, commercial and non-commercial. So if you're a new artist, you can just forget about commercial radio. I mean, they're not going to play you. It's not very practical. So you kind of have to dive into the non-commercial side of the radio, which is college stations and the kind of underground indie music stations, where they take submissions and then get your music awareness spread like that. And then touring and gigs is definitely a big thing. One of the biggest things besides radio to promote yourself and get your music out there. Just opening up for a band or doing talent shows, or singing in a restaurant that has an open mic night. Just any way that you can get your name and your music out there, and ultimately build that connection between people is super beneficial. So that was my research. And then, as you can see, I interviewed everybody and their mother. I had a total of 14 interviews, and I'm still counting. But it's definitely been beneficial to gain different perspectives and gain different types of marketing professionals to kind of broaden my perspective. So my first interview I had was with Casey Carlock, and she was the marketing manager for the Texas Rough Riders. And she was definitely one of the best people, I think, to have my first interview with, just because she was so down to earth and so sweet and so welcoming. And she was also very young, so that helped. She was in her early 20s, and she was still trying to figure out what she was doing, from a marketing standpoint, and kind of fitting in everything. So that was definitely very beneficial, and she was awesome. And then my next 6 interviews were all with Pizza Hut professionals that my dad was kind enough to give to me, his ex-coworkers. So I didn't have all the pictures, but the top one is Rebecca Miller, the middle one is Doug Turfer, and the bottom one is Courtney Moskovic. And so I hate to generalize them and put them in one specific category as Pizza Hut, because they all had great advice individually to give to me. But if I said what everyone said, we'd be here for a while. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of what they all said. Mostly, the most important thing that I learned from all of them is know your brand. Know your product, know how to promote it, know your target audience, just know your brand like the back of your hand, because every brand is different. Specifically for Pizza Hut, it's very weekend based, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday based, what am I trying to say? Sales process, exactly. So, you need to definitely take that into consideration when you're placing ads and coming up with marketing strategies, because usually most of the time when you want pizza, you're kind of driving home, like it's been a long week, it's Friday, you don't want to cook for yourself, and you're just like, I just want a pizza, I'm going to go to Pizza Hut. Or definitely holiday season as well, coming up with Super Bowl and even Christmas parties and things like that. So it's definitely something to take into consideration when coming up with marketing strategies for different products. And then next I had an interview with Scott Farber. It's actually a pretty funny and embarrassing story. So he is he's my older brother's ex-baseball coach. So he's kind of a family friend. And so I'm super psyched for this interview, because he's the founder of his own marketing agency, and he promotes artists such as Taylor Swift and Shania Twain, and he's the big deal. And so I was super excited, and I like got in my car on I remember exactly because it was really embarrassing. It was September 21st, 10 a.m. I get in my car and I drive to his house because that's where we schedule our interview. And I show up to his door, and the secretary answers, and she's like, "Oh," I'm like, "Hi, my name is Laura. I'm here for an interview with Scott Farber." And she's like, "Yeah, that's next Monday." And I'm just like, "Okay." And then I went home and cried. And so, yeah, that was not the best first impression, but it kind of helped that he was a family friend. But he was super sweet about it when we finally actually had our interview the next Monday. And, you know, he definitely gave me a different perspective on marketing, just because he experienced it through a music standpoint as opposed to, you know, my previous interviews with Pizza Hut. And it was definitely very intriguing, and it kind of fueled my passion and made me realize just how much music interested me in the marketing field, and how cool it was, you know, to travel all over the nation and, you know, meet with record labels and kind of come up with different strategies to promote an artist. So it was definitely very intriguing and very exciting to talk with him. And then my next interview was with Scott Erdman. He was a sales manager for the Dallas Cowboys, and it was kind of sales isn't necessarily what I want to do, but it was definitely beneficial to learn more about sales and kind of how the sale of a product affects different departments from a marketing standpoint. You know, one of the biggest things that I learned from my interviews is to be a well-rounded marketer and to learn as much as you can about every industry to, you know, be advantageous amongst your competition. So he was very elaborate, and he was full of wisdom when he was speaking at a very young age, and it was very humbling to hear his story, just because, you know, he started out at the bottom of the ladder, making hundreds of calls a day, you know, like cold calls, just calling people about selling IT equipment or something like that. And then, you know, now he's a top sales manager for the Dallas Cowboys. So it's definitely very inspiring to hear his story and hear his background and stuff like that. And then next, I had an interview with Lauren Cohen, who was the marketing director for Tracy Locke, which is a marketing agency, and kind of the same thing as Scott Erdman. He or she you know, started off low on the totem pole and then worked her way up, and it was definitely very inspiring to hear about. And she also was nice enough to show me one of the marketing strategies she was working on for Pizza Hut, because Tracy Locke and Pizza Hut worked together. And so, yeah, that was really cool to like actually look at something that I could potentially be doing one day. And then next, I had an email interview with Ross Redmond, who is a music producer and has his own band, and then he also does marketing for his own band as well. So he was definitely very beneficial, you know, just learning his background. He was a self-taught audio engineer, and now he has his own, you know, recording studio and is very successful. So I thought it was really cool, and he gave me more insight about the music industry and kind of how it works behind the scenes. So that was really interesting to learn about. And at the bottom, I placed his recording studio link and his band link if you guys want to check him out. It's part of my marketing thing. So yeah, just check that out. And then my last interview that I've had so far was with Carrie Walsh, and she's the marketing executive for Susan G. Komen. And she's probably, you know, taking into account that I still have other interviews to conduct. If those interviews don't go as well, I definitely want her as my mentor. Just she talks so eloquently, and she seems so full of knowledge just about marketing and, you know, all of her brands that she's worked with in the past. You know, she's had a really knowledge-filled past. She went to Stanford for her undergrad and then went to Wharton Business School for her master's, which was crazy to me. So she's already really smart, and then she had a whole bunch of internships lined up with PepsiCo and Frito-Lay and Pizza Hut. So that's definitely very inspiring to look at, and I definitely would consider her as a mentor. One of the biggest things she talked about was when you're networking, yes, it's beneficial to network and, you know, build relationships among people and have that contact, but if you're not doing it for the right intentions, you might as well not be doing it at all. You know, you don't want to just email someone that you find online and be like, hey, put me in your address book and I'll put you in mine, and then we'll keep in touch until we need each other. Like, that's not really beneficial to either of you, and it's not really you're not really doing that keeping good intentions in mind. So it's definitely something that can be beneficial if you do it the right way. So that was really cool to learn about, just her experience and all of her background and all of her knowledge that she had in the marketing field. And then yeah, that's it, because by original work. And then, yeah, that's it. That was really long, wasn't it?